Hey, my name's Laura, and I come from the world's friendliest country, Canada. Today actually marks 6 months that I've been living in France, and there's a lot of topics that I wanted to talk about on my YouTube channel about living in France as a Canadian. One of the first things that a lot of people said whenever I told them that I was moving to France was, aren't French people really rude? How are you going to handle that? So in this first video, I wanted to dig into the stereotype of whether French people really are rude and whether Canadians really are that polite. One of the most important parts of understanding a culture or understanding a group of people is understanding their language. And in the English language, something that we have that a lot of other languages don't have is 1,000 different words to say the same thing, and 1,000 different ways to make something exaggerated or sound better than it is. So one of the reasons, in my opinion, that people might see the French as being rude is because the language is more blunt and straight to the point. And in some ways, the language is a little bit more not negative, but it's not over exaggerating something. So for example, my boyfriend reposted a video on his Facebook that I had made, and he wrote a little description about it in English and in French. The English description was, "This is the best video that Laura has made yet, make sure to watch it." His French description of the video was not bad. So even him, in his own words and his own thoughts, he has the same thoughts about the video in English and in French, but the way that he would describe that in his two different languages is really different. The French also have a lot less small talk. If I'm in Canada at the grocery store, it's really likely that to the grocery store clerk, I'll talk about the weather, ask how her day is going, or his day is going. Just have a little bit of meaningless small talk. Whereas in a lot of other countries, and definitely in France, that's just not something you do. A simple hello is enough. Even asking how are you is kind of bizarre here, whereas in English, everyone you see, hey, how's it going? Hey, how are ya? Good, you. In French, there's no need for that. If you're asking someone how they are, you're genuinely wanting to know. And if someone asks you how you are, you're gonna give them a genuine answer. So I think, especially as a tourist or something, if you were in France and you asked a stranger, hey, how are you? Even if you could say that in French, you wouldn't get the reaction that you would expect, and I think it could come across as rude to you. But it's just not something they do here. Now, one thing that is really important in France and in the French culture, and is considered really rude if you don't do it, is saying hello when you walk into a store. So although the small talk and the hey, how are you, crazy weather, eh, isn't important, saying bonjour when you walk into a store really is important to people. Whereas in North America, that's not really the case. And I've thought a lot about this. Maybe it's because our stores are much bigger, and here, a lot of the stores that you walk into, it's just a one-room shop and it's the owner that's working, so you just say hello to them and go on with your shopping. But it is really important to simply say bonjour when you walk into a store. If you don't, you're considered rude, and it's just an important thing to do. So a funny story that happened to me and my French boyfriend, it was his first time visiting Canada this summer, and we walked into a UPS store. So there was one worker behind the counter, a lineup of 3 or 4 customers, one other customer in the shop. We walk in, go through the door, and Audric says, hello, as a general greeting to everyone in the UPS. And all of the people in the store turned around and looked at him like, who is this crazy person that just greeted all of us, said nothing, turned back around and continued doing what they were doing. And he looked at me like, these people are all so rude. So as you can see, this isn't a one-way street. Our experience of whether people are polite or rude in a different culture, it goes both ways. And I think it's really important to understand that, especially when you're a tourist somewhere, even if you have a bad experience with one person or you have a bad experience with one city, it's important not to think, wow, the people in this country are really rude. because there's a whole culture that you don't understand behind the way that people act. I think a lot of the people that do think the French are rude have only experienced France from a touristy perspective. And one of the things that you do a lot as a tourist is go to restaurants. Now, my experience with going to restaurants in Canada is that the waitresses are really fake nice. And that's fine because that's their job, to be kind of fake nice to you, because they only make money if you tip them. In most of Europe, that's not the case. Waitresses don't get tips or expect tips, so there's no reason for them to be fake, overly nice and overly friendly to you. And at first, really for the first while of me being in France, I wasn't going out to restaurants a lot, but when I did, I just thought, oh my goodness, the waitresses are really rude. Because as a customer in a restaurant, I'm also kind of being fake nice to waitresses, because that's just the relationship you have with a waitress and someone dining in a restaurant in North America. But in France, it doesn't have to be that way. The waitress's job is to take your order, tell the kitchen, and bring you your food, and that's it. They're not giving you over-the-top service because they don't need to. They aren't expecting a tip, and they don't need a tip from you. They're also a very honest culture. So if you ask for somebody's opinion, they're gonna give it to you and be honest about it. If you cook a meal for someone and ask them how was the food and they didn't love it, they're not gonna tell you that it was good. They're just gonna say something like, it's not my favorite, I prefer something else. And to me, that seems like something that's really rude, frankly. If I cook somebody a meal, and even if they don't like it, as a Canadian in my culture, I kind of expect them to just lie and say that it was great. But the other side of that is, if a French person cooks you a meal and they ask you, how's the food? They want to hear specific things that you liked or didn't like about it, which flavors you liked. They want a specific answer. They don't just want to hear that it was great all the time. Audric?
Yeah.
What do you think of my cooking?
Of your cooking?
Yeah.
I don't know, depends what you characterizing as cooking. Is it all the burning, like, stuff that you're trying to do?
Do you think I'm athletic?
What?
Do you like my makeup?
No.
Why?
Because it's too fake. I prefer the natural Laura.
Another thing that really frustrated me when I first came to France was how close strangers would get to you. If you're in line at the grocery store, if you're in a crowd, people get right up next to you and didn't have this concept of personal space that I'm really used to. At first, I really thought that this was something that made French people rude, was they didn't give you that personal space that you kind of need. But again, that's just a part of the culture. People in France kiss on the cheeks everyone that they meet. So I think that is part of the reason why it's normal to be closer to strangers and not need as much personal space, because literally everyone you ever meet, you're kissing. Whereas in North America, we don't have such an intimate culture. We like our individuality more and more personal space. But that's fair. Again, it's just a big cultural difference that I've been getting used to. Swearing. Swearing in the French language is something really interesting that I'm still learning a lot about. So it does seem, if you directly translate English swear words to French swear words, that the French have the same swear words that we do and the same meaning behind those swear words. But what I've noticed is that the people in France don't think of swear words the same way as we do. My experience with swearing in Canada is that you don't swear around people that you don't really know very well. You definitely try to avoid swearing in public. Definitely don't swear when there's kids around or when there's older people around. It's just kind of a disrespectful thing to do. Here in France, it is not that at all. I've seen parents swearing around their kids. old people swearing, and I use the word swearing lightly and loosely. It's just they're saying the translation of English swear words, but there really isn't the same negative and heavy meaning behind swear words when they're translated to French. Yeah, you don't want your little kids saying certain words and saying these swear words, but it's not as taboo at all. It's not as negative or heavy of a thing. So overall, obviously I don't think that French people are rude. I wouldn't have moved here if I thought that. But I do think that there are some really big cultural differences, more than you might think, between two different westernized cultures. And I also think that it's really important that you, as a potential traveler, don't allow what other people think about a culture to stop you from traveling there. Travel and see the world and decide for yourself whether you think that a group of people are rude or a group of people are polite, or maybe just that a group of people are different from your group of people. I hope that this video inspires you to be open-minded about cultures that you don't fully understand and don't fully know, and that you don't let other people's stereotypes affect how you feel or what you think about a culture or a group of people. Happy traveling and bon voyage! Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a like down below, and comment if you've had any similar cultural experiences as I have, and what you think about French being rude, Canadians being polite. And if you have other ideas for videos from the perspective of me, a Canadian living in France, I'd love if you commented your video ideas for me down below as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.